Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future. My name is Zach Gardner. I'm the chief architect at Keyhole Software. And a few months ago, I decided that enough was enough. No, I'm not talking about fad diets. No, I'm not talking about Stanleys, which, I'm not paid to say this, but Stanleys are amazing if you're in the market for a water beverage cooler. No, I'm talking about generative AI. I kept hearing about it and hearing about it and hearing about it. It was on LinkedIn, on Hacker News, on every single website that I went to. And I was like, all right, is this legit or is this sus, to use the parlance of the time? So I went out, as all chief architects do. Did a little bit of a journey. I went to Bali, I got some henna tattoos. Not really, but I wish. I went out on the internet and I was looking for people that were really walking the walk, talking the talk. People that were into generative AI, people that were into machine learning, that were just into the field of AI, much longer, much deeper experience than I do. And people, maybe most importantly, people that would be crazy enough to get on a video cast with me and talk about it. So, coming to you live from, let's see if my memory is right. You're east of me, Tennessee. Am I
Yep,
right?
that's right.
Mm. I might have had two kids. I might not be able to remember what I had for breakfast, but I sure as anything can remember where someone lives that I've talked to 2 months ago when we set up this interview. So today, ladies and gentlemen, with me, I have John Fly. He's the CTO at Firm Pilot AI. John, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. Really looking forward to the conversation. Um, just a little bit about me to kind of kick it off. Big technology geek. I started coding when I was probably about 6 on an old Texas Instrument system. You had to wire it into your TV. Learned BASIC. Came with a game and a BASIC manual. So, played the game, picked up the manual, and started learning how to code. Just fell in love with it. And made that my passion, made that my hobby. I was early to like the dial-up bulletin boards, early to the internet, and early to the web. And I've just seen a lot of technologies come and go, and AI is definitely making waves. So I'm really excited to be part of Firm Pilot. We're a marketing AI company, and we're doing some fantastic stuff, getting some amazing results for our customers.
Very cool. Very cool. And just as the disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been told by some that it's probably good I didn't go into that field. All my buddies from college, for whatever reason, went to law school, and they were like, "Don't do this, dude. Like whatever you do not do it." But I always have to say, all the views and opinions expressed in this program are the views and opinions of the participants and do not reflect their employers or any trade organizations that they are affiliated with. This is just two people that have a deep technical background. Now, my first program was not in BASIC. I believe I was like the Borland C++ compiler. I remember it.
Hmm.
I was going to create my own video game, as
Yep.
any 12-year-old thinks that they can do. So, I garbage collection. What's that? 60 frames per second. What's that? So to get us started off with, you talked a little bit about Firm Pilot. I'm
Yeah,
curious if you can talk me through, how did you get into marketing?
sure.
Maybe what are some interesting things about marketing that those of us not in the field maybe don't know? And then, what's the problem? Like, what's the business space that Firm Pilot AI solves?
Sure. So we're an AI-driven marketing company. So the services we provide are really focused on driving kind of like the SEO strategy. So we provide essentially 6 lines of service for our customers. There's blog content creation, there's social media posts, there's on-page SEO, there's backlinks creation, kind of like who's pointing to you. There's Google My Business management and optimization, which is a really interesting thing. And then pay-per-click ad campaign optimization. But we are helping people optimize for the machine. We're really helping companies get highly rated in Google. We want to push you up to the first page. We want to push you up to the first spot. We want to get you authoritative little snippets in Google. So really, we're we're kind of removing. So there's definitely room for like artistic, creative panache and ego in that world. But Firm Pilot is really building content that is authoritative, factual, and really meant to be very clear and to help drive search optimization, to help you build your brand and get noticed by things like Google, and get eyes on your content. So it's about results, not about particular color palettes.
Hmm.
I came in, this is my first foray into marketing. I've spent many years in technology, a lot of years in systems design and architecture. But the last few years, last decade really has been in growing small companies, kind of startups, and leaning out large behemoth organizations. And often part of that senior leadership role is being on the business side, talking about customer acquisition strategy, lead gen, the business of business. And when I was presented with kind of this marriage of high tech and this low, no ego approach to SEO, um, I felt like I have the experience and I have the interest in the space. And like you said, AI is, it's not necessarily new, but it's exploding in ways recently that it has never blown up in, right? Where everybody's talking about it. AI tools are the thing to be working on. So as somebody who just loves tech, it's a way to kind of re-energize myself into tech. I'm kind of back into code more than I have been in a lot of years.
Hmm. Yeah, a little bit of jealousy. I don't get to fire up my ID as much as I'd like, but that's okay. The boss doesn't want me to do it, but we won't tell him. Don't worry, he's not listening. All right, so interesting. So I'm in the as we get into any new emerging field, there's obviously things. It's
Mhm.
like we don't know what we don't know, and so
Mhm.
as someone who is using the OpenAI APIs, I'm assuming, I'm
Mhm.
curious if there's any challenges that you've run into, maybe things that you hadn't initially thought of would be difficult, but ended up being difficult, or things you were just like, why does it have to be this hard? Why can't it just be simpler? I'm curious if you have any insights that you're willing to share.
Certainly. So one of the things that really surprised me was how inconsistent these systems can be when you're interacting with them through the APIs, right? You can send, thousands of requests per day for content, or even per hour, and the amount of times it'll do a hallucination, like those are the obvious ones. But what we've seen is, so one, we're not just using OpenAI. Firm Pilot is always testing the waters with all the main AI providers, all the large LLMs. And so we get different results during different times of the day. We've our staff, right, feels like during peak hours, the quality of content definitely dips. So we've adjusted some of our systems to interact with the APIs at off-peak hours, to get maybe more compute cycles, less timeouts on their system, obviously, but we feel that the quality is better off-peak hours, especially for like the open AI systems. So we don't know if it's like some type of like CPU consumption rate limiting, but we're suspicious there, right? That they've got,
Yeah.
they have finite resources, so they might be controlling that with how much time they give each prompt. Um,
Hmm.
we're also just these systems. I mean, they're third parties, and so a lot of these AI companies, right? There's a lot of just Chat GPT wrappers coming out where really their company's nothing more than just a thin wrapper over these AI products. And luckily, FirmPilot, we're building that tech moat everybody wants to talk about. We're bringing in our own tech, but um, when we're dealing with all of these third party integrations, um, they change. There's nuance. They release updates, and the way they respond day to day or week to week does change. So it's just keeping up, not just with API specs because those change, but just keeping up with the responses, the results. I think so. I don't know when this interview is going to go out, but the news, some of the big news from yesterday, everybody was up in arms about Gemini and the
Oh
AI
yeah,
art generation, right?
yeah.
Um, where uh, it's pretty obvious that Google tweaked their algorithms to always generate like I think diverse and inclusive images, but that wasn't transparent, and so as a consumer of these systems, we have to be like ever mindful that the vendors are in the background tweaking things themselves. And
Mhm.
so you can't sit on your hands. You have to keep up with everything.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. And I like that you mentioned it too. There's the moat, so to speak, of technology that you have to build. You don't want to
Hmm.
have, just as a system architecture principle, kind of putting that hat on, you don't want to have a single point of failure. And if the only thing that someone's product is doing is putting a small veneer on top of the open AI APIs and just
Hmm.
not really adding any value, you're ripe for the picking. I remember,
Oh yeah.
gosh, it was possibly October, maybe slightly earlier last year in 2023, when they had the Open AI Days, whatever their conference is called. It's not Apple's. It's where it's like W3C, but it's like whatever Open AI's big developer conferences, and they announced that they were going to have OCR support.
Hmm.
Well, there were a score or more of
Yep.
companies that they were startups. That was the only thing they were doing. They took an off the shelf OCR tool. They took the output of that, fed it as input to text to chat GPT, and then they returned the results overnight like that. They were worth
Gone. Yeah.
zero, nada, zilch. So it's really cool that you're able to bring in sort of your own tech stack, your own understanding, and being able to source these insights from not just one single source. One of the other things on the Google front that came out, it might have been this week, it might have been last. It's getting hard to keep all these things straight in my head. Was their open source large language models, their foundational models, to kind of
Hmm.
compete with Facebook's Llama. I'm curious if you've looked at any of those sort of those open source ones, either Llama or Google's. It's not Gemini, but it's what powers Gemini. I think it starts with a G. I think they just have a. I think Google has a proclivity to tools that start with a G. I don't know. I wonder why. I'm curious if you've used any of those tools yet.
So we're constantly exploring for like large to small uses. Again, back to like the marketing space, like playing for like SEO optimization. It's not just about the words on a blog post or the words in a social media post. Um, I was really blown away, like our internal SEO marketing experts. So when we have them on staff that are helping us understand what scores well in the SEO world. There's there's dozens of small little micro edits and things in the process of developing highly ranking content. And so we're constantly looking at where can we use these large language models, but also where can we use these open source systems to really build some of that customized behavior that really is like kind of our human expertise distilled into a repeatable process. Um, but again, it's the difficulty for a small company is there's new stuff popping up every day, and so part of my role and responsibility is to uh, help us do enough R&D where we're keeping our kind of first mover advantage in this space, but where we're not fragmenting all our developers going and looking at shiny stuff all day long every day. So we've got to deliver the code to production sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, production, you can't live with it, you can't live without it, as I always say. I mean, one of the challenges for me too is not even just cognitive capacity, it's also physical capacity. Like my laptop, God love her, she's gotten me through a lot, but I don't know why I call her a she, I just anthropomorphized my laptop. I'll say it has not kept up with the times. I got like two GPUs on it, maybe. I got like 8, maybe 16 gigs of RAM. Like it's not much, it's starting to show a little bit of wear and tear. Still play Minecraft on it though. Still play
Mhm.
Minecraft pretty well. So that's the most important thing. And Visual Studio. I can only have one instance open though. So one of the things that I've sort of struggled with is if I do want to use LangChain, if I do want to use any of these tools that are out there, it usually requires on the edge sometimes expensive hardware.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can just go off the street. Like I couldn't go to Micro Center and pick up an $800 laptop and expect it to be able to render out, especially because when you talk about these large language models, there's a large amount of training that you have to
Hmm.
do. You have to have just huge data, huge amounts of data, talk about big data in
Hmm.
memory. And then to operate these things, I mean, it's a huge bill. I've heard
Hmm.
OpenAI's daily run rate on Azure is like north of 1 million a day, which is like, that's so much money. But, I guess somebody's got to buy Satya Nadella's, sixth airplane. So I'm curious if you've seen any other sort of technical challenges that come along with using these things, whether it's difficulties on the edge, whether it's like you said, which actually I've never really heard before, people saying that there's differences in the quality of the content. If people are wanting to get into this, like what are some of the barriers, but maybe what are some of the cool things, other than just kind of nerding out on it.
Oh, well, so again, I'll play like the old man card. When I got my first like professional job coding, I was doing some Microsoft Visual C++. I could compile my code twice a day. I could do it once at lunch and then once at the end of the day because it took an hour for me to compile my work to build a test version of my app. I think that's maybe where we are again, like you said, where if I want to play around with training a model on my laptop, I mean, I've got, an M1 Mac, so fairly recent, not cutting edge by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, it can take hours and hours for it to chew through a data set, which like you said, in reality is just a fraction of what it needs to be doing a lot of the functions people are trying to do. So I think in my mind, this is one of the reasons why I'm not really afraid that AI is coming for all of our jobs. One, there's just some things that it's hard to replicate, and it's going to take coders and expert technologists to make a good use of these tools. And so, um, I guess for me, it's thinking about what I'm doing. Since I can't do a compile test cycle in seconds, I have to be more mindful, I guess is where I'm getting at. It's I have to think about what I'm intending to do as I'm coding. And it feels a little bit like what I used to do, 15, 20 years ago, where I would code for a long time. I would think about what I'm doing and then do a build much more infrequently. And then if I wanted to make like a real deal master copy, I might have to put it up on some type of larger server. And you're right. And throwing it on the hardware to build something big, I mean, that's a costly proposition for anybody, unless you're Microsoft or OpenAI.
Hmm. Yeah, you
Um,
kind of just can do
but
whatever you want. Yeah.
then you can just do whatever you want, right? Millions don't matter.
Hmm.
But you just have to think about what you're doing. I think these open source models or open source language models are fantastic to get your hands on the concepts, though, right? You're probably not going to create something to challenge an open AI on your personal laptop. Um,
Hmm.
so that's probably another thing to think about is, why are you playing around with these tools? If it's to learn, start small. There are things that you can train up you know, very quickly and get your hands on the concepts. And it's just, so there's a training aspect and a skilling up aspect you can definitely do at home. You can definitely do on cheaper hardware, do someone like the free tier cloud providers, but you just got to think about what you're about to get into.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. Kind of had a flashback to Lawrence of Arabia when Peter O'Toole was saying something like, all great things start small, something to that effect. So,
Exactly.
I mean, definitely technical and physical limitations, I think, are one aspect of it. Some of the really interesting things that have come out in the past few weeks are Sam Altman's plan to sort of revolutionize the silicon chip to be able to sort of break free of the ones and the zeros that have shackled us for all of these years. Quantum computing, I've also in a lot of these conversations heard is potentially one of the other things that will sort of the Lord appearing as a cloud of fire, sort of ushering us through the Red Sea, be able to take these algorithms which have to run with a high degree of parallelization to have any semblance of getting done in a reasonable amount of time, being able to just throw these at a quantum computer which has a qubit, I believe, is like 8 bits, so instantly you've like quadrupled your capacity without changing the underlying algorithm. I mean, granted, you might have to write it in some of the languages that support quantum technology. It's like Q sharp or something like that. So there is maybe the potential, if Moore's law holds true, that maybe like 5, 6, 7 years down the road, we could be able to have these models trained and executed much quicker. But unless there's some revolution in superconductivity not being at like nearly 0 Kelvin, I really doubt that is going to be like a large boon for the John Flies and the Zach Gardners of the world. I don't think that I'm going to be able to have like a quantum computer sitting like underneath my desk. So at least what you're saying echoes a lot of what I've heard. I'm curious though, to kind of get your take on the difference between like, have you delved into ML ops at all, like machine learning operations, as opposed to DevOps, which is like more for CI/CD for applications?
Enough to know I'm not able to play in that space right now,
Yeah. Yeah,
personally.
it's so different. Like in terms of DevOps, when we publish out new versions of applications, Facebook does it hundreds of times a day. They just constantly have a churn of application code deployed to production.
Hmm.
ML ops, though, there are just some constraints in terms of how quickly they can train the model, how quickly they can run the validations to make sure it's not hallucinating, to where
Hmm.
there's a large lag time just philosophically built into that pipeline. That if anyone out there is curious to get into ML ops, like make sure you got a large cup of coffee. Make sure you got like a 64 ouncer from Quick Trip, because it's going to take a while for those builds to run. So I'm curious, kind of to wrap it up, to put a bow on it. What are some of the things that maybe excite you about generative AI, and what are some of the things that, as a CTO, other than OpenAI, deciding to fire their CEO and then bring him back again, like all that crazy stuff. Like, what are some of the things that maybe keep you up at night?
So, so the type of leader I try and be is the type that I wish I'd had in my career. So, um, the things that excite me and are the things I want to pass into my team, and that really is the fact that like we really don't know where we're going to go from here. I mean, it's exciting because um, there are breakthroughs happening. Are we heading towards the singularity? Is there some type of marriage between, AI, ML? Like, are we going to hit like actual intelligence in a computer system? General AI. Will it marry with quantum? What will that do for the world? I don't know, but it's definitely no end of new things to learn and experiment on. I think the concern that I have to temper that excitement with, especially, professionally, is what I said earlier. From a responsible, part of this business, is making sure we're not spending all of our time and effort chasing down things that we don't really have any understanding and like, what are we going to use that for? What could we do? Like, even if we're successful with something cool and new, is there a product there? There's a big difference between a little personal hobby project and some core component of a business. So um, I'm really excited to continue to see all these aspects of these large language models and AI systems come out. Really excited to introduce some customization, some small purpose-built agents in our own software. But again, tempered with hopefully just responsible business. Not throwing good money after complete hopes and dreams.
Yep, get that snake oil out there. So no, that's a good way to wrap it up. It's been real, John Fly. Thank you very
This has been
much for
good.
the insights. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, anytime. And ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for more. We'll catch you in the future.